Issue 166. So this issue continues a 25 years later story, which came as a really shocking, pleasant surprise because I thought for sure that would just be a Penders thing. And once it got put on hiatus, it would never get a proper conclusion. Turns out I was wrong, but you can't blame me in that assumption. We started with narration explaining that Sonic had been sent back in time and somehow closed the temporal wounds, saving all of existence from the planet blowing up. He did? But when he saved the past somehow, by just being sent back in time to get data, he realized that the future had been irrevocably changed. Irrevocably? Couldn't he just go back in time again? Nobody seems to realize this when they have time machines. We see Angel Island's portal city with an angel statue of Maria that people are worshipping. I doubt she'd be comfortable with that, but that's how much her death hurt Shadow. And more confusingly, there's a sign on a tall building saying the Chaotix are watching, like it's a dictatorship using a scare tactic for the criminals. I mean, they were heroes, so it makes sense that they would want to go after any villains they can find, which would be criminals. It's force of habit, really. Tails then flies around and thinks while wearing a pilot's goggles and gears like these boomtails, not done complaining, that this isn't right, and he has to round up the old triple threat to do damage control. Triple threat? The only triple threat I can think of would be Metal Sonic, Bang, and Robotnik, or Shadow, Isaac, and Metal Sonic. Triple threat sounds too menacing for Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails. And why does Tails know that this isn't right instead of being affected by the future being changed so they think it's normal? Thankfully, this does get explained, but other than this, which is filled up, there's so many plot holes and we're already only in the first panel. I'm excited. We start off seeing Lara Sue at Guardian Tower making some pebbles levitate, surrounded by blue light. And Knuckles compliments her that he wasn't nearly as good at her age. I have a question, why didn't she disappear like we saw her doing last time? I'm glad she's okay, but are they gonna fucking explain that? She heartwarmingly hugs her father, calling him a great teacher, and Tails shows up with stress lines under his eyes, saying that it's been a long time. This causes Knuckles to tell Lara to go wash up and he'll meet her back at home, not telling her anything else. At least it seems like he acknowledges he's being just like Locke here, because he actually says please afterwards, looking like he feels guilty. Then Tails tells him to not even start, explaining that he knows he wasn't always King Shadow's chief enforcer, has memories of different pasts, and was near the Tachyon chamber back then. Knuckles naturally lampshades that he seems to know a lot for someone who wasn't there. Tails explains that he knew there was a problem, so he took some precautions. He kept himself and his family safe from the adjustment in space-time somehow. Everyone near the Tachyon chamber carried over elements of the other present. How'd he know any of this? How'd he know there was a problem? How'd he know to keep his family safe from the time machine event he could have possibly known happened? Did Rotor call him and tell him about it off-screen? He says that Kobor is missing for his connection to all of this. I thought his name was Kobar. Why would Leonida get rid of such a top scientist? And they have to find Sonic and act. Knuckles simply says, "Get out, Miles, before I place you under arrest." Good to see his morality hasn't fallen. He's even cold enough to not call him his affectionate nickname of Tails. I mean, Knuckles was always a neutral character, only fighting Robotnik for Angel Island's sake. I guess that's what they're going with? Lara reveals to Tails that she had learned to listen in and knew about the conversation. She then explains that she doesn't know what happened then, implying that unfortunately, even she doesn't know what the banishing thing was about. Why was it just her? In the catacombs beneath the Castle Mobius, Shadow says that lesser Mobians, who had cracked by now, to Rotor, implying that he respects him because he doesn't think he's lesser, and yet doesn't respect him enough to have to torture and interrogate him. So what exactly are they interrogating Rotor for again? He thanks Leonida for turning him in, saying that she's proven herself once again as she smirks. Shadow was a villain in SA2, so I don't entirely mind seeing him as one here. It makes sense, but it's still kind of weird that he become a king and stuff. Leonida says to thank Kobor because he designed it for her when she caught him and Rotor conspiring in the other timeline. They weren't conspiring though, they were conspiring to save the world. That's not conspiring at all. What's it anyways? What did Kobor design? Also, Shadow knows about the other timeline? But he wasn't there! He wasn't anywhere near the time machine. It's like he only knows because he's one of the main characters. He says that he had been nice enough to thank Kobor 47 times about the head and shoulders. And then he says it was a true pleasure as Linda giggles. What does that even mean? Shadow then says he cannot lose his world because he's done too much good for it to be stopped now. See, this is good writing. He's a well-intentioned extremist who naturally believes that he's a good ruler and should keep running the world. That I can easily buy. A Dark Legion goon says that the Dark Eyes, which I can only assume are spies for her, have thought that she'd like to see this, and hands her a device showing her a screen showing that Lara Tsu is running around with the wrong crowd. Shadow tells her to contact his legitimate chief enforcer to handle this, as if there's an illegitimate one. So does that mean other than Knuckles? It's kind of hard to understand this issue. I feel like I'm missing out on basic information. Surprisingly, Tails finds Sonic and feels really sorry for him, putting his arm around him as Sonic fakes a smile in the street alley, looking like a broken man. I love that he still to this day calls Tails kiddo. It really goes to show you how much he cares about him as a little brother. He says to the press that he asks himself if he even still is Sonic. Naturally, since he hasn't been the hero of the world his whole identity in 25 years. And he fakes a smile trying to hide how devastated he is as he tries to joke around about the situation. It's so in character for Sonic to do. I really love how he's written. He says, one day you're king of the world. Then you go dimension fix all space-time and boom! You're on the street without anything but the sneakers on your feet. Was that all really all of space-time though? I thought it was just constrained to his dimension. It's really interesting to see Sonic so broken like this. Like he can actually feel and stuff, being more real than just a deliverer of one-liners. Tails told him that he had protected Mina and the kids along with himself, as the two hold hands showing that they still care about each other. And they fake smiles the best as they can, with Sonic trying to look on the bright side, saying, "Good, that's very good." Again, I love this. It makes sense that he knows Tails from the old future, because he didn't immediately question why he said he was the king. But he shouldn't have been written to say future when he should have thought of it as the present instead. Then Sonic starts to tear up, saying, "Not Sonia and Manic though, they're gone forever. And Sally's married to Shadow. Why? Because they're actually compatible? Both being serious, cautious people and all. It's amazing how literally every other option for Sally is more compatible with her than him. Still, this is a pretty heart-wrenching scene as Tails hugs him protectively with tears in his eyes, and Sonic is upset enough to only partially hug back, and Lara's horrified at the prospect. That really is a shame. I hope those kids will be brought back. So, is the justification for why Sonic hasn't spoken to Tails in 3 years supposed to suddenly be that they kept their distance because Tails somehow knew ahead of time this timeline changing would happen? No, because they're acting like these years of neglect never happened and Tails still loves Sonic just as much. Shouldn't they address that? It's weird that Sonic says, "Sweet Maria, have mercy." You'd think he'd rebelliously refuse to use that kind of phrase. And again, Maria, help me. Why would he bind to saying that? Tails shows pragmatism, saying with his arms around him that they can't risk turning back time again, because you never know what might happen the next time. And he hates that Sonic had to pay such a huge price for saving everyone. Sonic then reveals what a hero he really is, saying that he'd do it all again. Finally, it's kind of addressed a little the years of neglect, as Sonic puts his hands on his arms as Tails puts his hands on his and says desperately, "At least I can fix us. I'm sorry I let things get so bad between. Unfortunately, I don't get to hear what he meant by that and how it could have possibly gotten so bad." As Tails effortlessly forgives him, heartwarmingly saying, "You just had to ask." He hugs Tails, thanking him as Lara smiles with her arms crossed at that. Sonic suddenly goes back to his super optimistic self all of a sudden, as Lara says that all they have to do is break into Castle Mobius, beat King Shadow, and get Queen Sally to marry Sonic. And somehow, literally all of them are completely positive that this plan will work. Even though one, Shadow's way more powerful than Sonic, remember he destroyed an entire army of Neo Metal Sonics just by raising a hand. And two, Sally wouldn't just up and marry Sonic so easily if she married Shadow. Unless she never fell out of love with him and married Shadow to have a husband while she thought Sonic was dead. That makes sense. The story ends with Knuckles telling them that they're all under arrest for treason, even his own daughter. In the next story, we start out with someone telling a dazed Knuckles that he won't ruin his life this time. And then we cut to yesterday in Station Square City. Why not just call it Station Square? It's needlessly long. We see a human kid advertising in a newspaper about the Casinopolis grand opening tomorrow. So is Moby so behind on the times that kids still sell newspapers on the streets like it's the 20s? They don't have the internet, I guess. Rouge learns from the paper that Renfield is back, as in the mouse guy that betrayed the heroes in the Knuckles Chaotic special. Rouge says it's probably more than just free chips to the first 100 in the door. Knuckles says to the President and Rouge over transmission that with Eggman in control of Angel Island, he probably set Renfield free from jail just out of spite. So did Renfield get thrown in jail off screen? I mean, he wasn't in it the last time we saw him. Sally says that the Chaotix somehow have the greatest connection to the case, so she's leaving it up to their team. Then she has a bitch moment where she says that she'd send Bunny instead of the much more capable Sonic to bail them out, purely to spite Sonic. Also, she's drawn really weird here. Our Chucker tells the Dingo that he has his slot machines. The Dingo complains that it's about time and it wasn't like this when Stryker was in charge. And he tells him to open the back driveway for the new machines. Someone asked what took them so long because they opened it a few hours, and he's told to take it up with General Cage and Zion here to unload. Renfield says that he can bet that with this, he can pay for his early parole, and says that he couldn't be faulted for the poor saps going out with a smile, before smirking saying that he always puts on a good show. This guy really is insane. It's lampshaded that Rouge isn't normally part of the Chaotix, and Rouge lies that she's just proving she's gone legit, and tries to get Knuckles to stick up for her, causing Julie to get really mad at her, and Knuckles has to be the mediator to break the fight up. At first, Knuckles is told that the casino isn't officially open yet, but he's let in when he says he has business with Renfield. Knuckles points out once he's in that since Renfield of course only hired Mobian, the Chaotix could pass themselves off as part of the workforce in there. Mighty wonders that if it's like last time, they'd have to look into anything unusual where food is sold, to avoid another food poisoning incident. Knuckles compliments Mighty on that insight and orders everyone to split up and check in every few minutes. Did I mention that I love Knuckles as the leader? I'll say it again. Then Knuckles makes some progress through some automatically closing doors and wonders if he can get some answers out of the foreman. When the foreman says to contact Eggman, Knuckles immediately gets angry and starts a fight. After Mighty stupidly eats a chili dog without having any way of knowing if it's not poisoned, proving that he doesn't learn his lesson, Julie reasons that Renfield wouldn't try the same thing twice, and that because Knuckles is late checking in, they'll have to drop the gentle approach. Knuckles realizes from hearing a clang sound, punching the foreman, and seeing metal below the skin, that he's one of Eggman's auto-automations. He could just say robot. Unfortunately, he gets hit with a fist launched at him and is knocked out, causing the foreman to call Renfield, saying that he will prepare him for him. Rouge asks if the machines are safe, and when Vector looks like he's in a trance, Rouge wonders if it's something with the screens, and then she and Espio go into a trance too. We then cut back to Knuckles, who says that he won't ruin his life this time, and he's been a victim of circumstance. I can understand why he'd think that. He says that his friends' minds have been scanned by the screens and the data will be used to program some infiltrator robots based on them. The slot machines are there as a creative way of making new robots for Eggman. If he can't roboticize, he can at least do some sort of equivalent. Although I can't see how that would be as satisfying, and he should just be able to build robots without that. Renfield explains that once Station Square has been turned into Eggman's army, he'll be free to go. And it's just business. Then Julie and Mighty fortunately show up, acting as Chekhov's gun since they hadn't gone to the trance. And Julie explains that the data can't be transferred since she pulled the plug. When Renfield says in fear that Eggman will be furious that he failed, Julie says in a sassy way, "Not my problem." Renfield says that even without the data, the factory could still make mindless killer robots for him. Then Mighty, carrying a ball of twisted metal, explains that there's no factory anymore, and the robot army was never created. The panel to the left of the President in Station Square really annoys me because there's some people in silhouettes that I don't know who they are, and they're mostly just having text boxes with mere pictures in them, with one of them saying he was led into a trap of Eggman's. What's even going on? The President says that Gunn will make sure all of Eggman's devices are destroyed, while Renfield will stay in trial. And aside from a bit of vertigo, none of the patrons seem to be harmed by the scanning devices. I'm really glad the story concluded conclusively in one issue. I thought for sure it'd be a story arc. For some reason I found the story tedious to read. And I really don't know why, because I love the concepts. Maybe it was the format with the small panels all horizontal? I hate to think I was impatient with it for such a petty reason. This issue is by Ian Flynn, and in the first story, I was really pleasantly surprised that they continued the 25 years later in a different dimension story arc. I'd assumed, naturally, that it'd never be continued because it was Pender's thing. I'm still mad about that Lara Sue disappearing cliffhanger because we'll never know what the original writer's intention was for what that would lead to. But I kind of like Ian Flynn's interpretation, even if it did leave some glaring plot holes, like how the hell the apocalypse was averted in the first place. King Shadow being a well-intentioned extremist who made his subjects and even Sonic treat Maria as a sort of religious figure makes perfect sense with his character, especially since the Maria thing stems from the sheer amount of damage Maria's death did to him. It makes perfect sense that he'd carry psychological baggage into being king, and that he'd think he's done too much good to lose the kingdom now. And I loved seeing Sonic and Tails make up with Sonic being totally devastated, trying to smile through the fact that he lost everything. My problem with the story is related to the fact that I'm lacking basic information. I don't understand how Sonic being sent back in time on his own not only fixed the bullshit world's gonna end problem, but also caused this whole alternate timeline in the first place. And I hated how I wasn't told what it was that made things get so bad between Sonic and Tails. The whole time I was wondering why. But I loved the concepts. And in the second story, I loved the concepts too. The scanning slot machine creating infiltrators, Renfield wanting his revenge for Knuckles ruining his life so much. I'd hate to say I found it tedious from the panel format alone. I mean, that'd be a really shitty reason to hate his story. Maybe it's also because I was tired and fatigued when writing the review. But for what it's worth, I'd say it's a great story. Great concepts, no big plot holes or anything. It was okay.